You're listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, episode number 107.
Welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Jill Castle. I'm a registered dietitian specializing in pediatric nutrition, and this show is all about nourishing kids inside and out and helping parents like you raise healthy eaters. Today, I am sort of in a weird space with this show, trying to decide what I was going to talk about today. And I was scheduled to actually make this a monologue show, which is me talking to you about different tips about nutrition and feeding. And then at the last minute, I was like, ooh, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to air a guest expert interview. And so I prepped my guest expert interview, which I was moving up to an earlier show. And in the middle of doing that, I was like, no, I need to get on and talk about feeding families and tips and my experience of what I'm doing with my family while we are all sheltering in place during this coronavirus pandemic. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to dive into my new reality, which I know is probably your new reality, being sheltered in place. And specifically, I want to talk about feeding your family and some of the things that I've been doing, as well as some of my advice for you. Take it or leave it. However it sets with you, that's fine by me. I don't have tons of super concrete advice today. I don't have a well-planned show. I'm really talking off the cuff today. This is episode 107. I will include some links that I'm going to mention as I talk through this show, and I'll have those for you over on the website, www.jillcastle.com/107. But I just really want to talk about what's going through my head as a mom myself, what I've been sort of going through over the last 2 weeks, and hopefully how that can possibly resonate with you or even translate into some of the things you're going to do in the realm of feeding your family. So currently, I am in the third week of having all of my kids home. I have 4 children. Many of you already know that. One has officially grown and flown, has a job in the city, has her own apartment. She's home now. She's been home for over 2 weeks. Her entire apartment basically evacuated. All the roomies went home to be with their family during coronavirus because my daughter lives in New York City, and we really wanted her to come home. And her job started to work from home, and we thought it would be best if we had her home with us. So she came home just over 2 weeks ago and has been working from home. My second daughter, who is a senior in college, returned after her spring break in early March, before all of the mandates and school closings and everything like that started to happen. She returned home, and over the weekend after she returned home, her school extended their spring break by another week. So she was home for a week, and then at the end of that week, they closed the school. So she is home for the rest of the semester. Yesterday, we found out they canceled her graduation and are reevaluating a time frame for that. So she's here. She happens to actually have a part-time job that she is able to work from home. And she also is taking and finishing her courses for the semester. My third daughter is home from college as well, taking courses online. And my high school senior is also home full-time, taking his courses online. So we have a full nest. I have more mouths to feed, more groceries to buy, more cooking to do, more cleaning up, more dishes to wash. There's just a lot more of more. And if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I have had my moments where I have felt completely overwhelmed and frustrated and sad. I had a point at which last week, which would have been, I guess, week 2 of being sheltered in place, I really felt like I had no motivation to write, to work with families, to comment on social media, to create anything. I was in a real funk. And that was difficult because, of course, I was going online and going to social media and scrolling through and thinking, wow, everybody is just plugging away, continuing to work, continuing to create blog posts and podcast episodes. And I don't really want to do any of that. And so I was in a real funk. And I decided, it kind of hit me at the end of the week that I was actually in mourning. I was mourning the losses, the changed trips, the speaking engagements in April that all have been converted to webinars, the 25th wedding anniversary trip I had scheduled with my husband that is delayed. Just so many losses, the clients that have canceled, the contracts that have been altered, and then my children's losses. The loss of graduation, the loss of that final senior year in college, the loss of my son's spring crew season and the potential to go to nationals again, and the loss of my regular gym and my regular yoga workouts, and just so much loss. It really got to me. And so I don't know if you're feeling some of that too, or if you've been sailing through this, but as I said, when I started this podcast, I'm going to keep it real. And sometimes I was just feeling super down in the dumps. And I'll talk about that in a little bit because I think anxiety and stress and feeling hopeless in this situation is not unusual, and probably a lot of people are feeling that way, even when they consider themselves to be the most upbeat, positive people on the planet, and who may not be prone to mental illness or depression or anything like that. This situation, this lack of control, this lack of certainty, this unforeseen future, I've got to believe is weighing on everybody in some way, shape, or form. So I know that I'm trying to make the best of it. I'm sure that probably you're trying to make the best of this situation as well. And I thought I could just share a few things that I'm noticing in the media, some observations that I've made about anxiety, food safety, and I also want to just give you some philosophy or tips in terms of how I'm dealing with mealtime. So let's talk about food safety first, because there's been a lot of misinformation circulating around on how to clean fruits and vegetables. And I've seen it on YouTube. I've seen it in blog posts. It certainly is a topic where a lot of people are worried about it. But let me tell you, the FDA has very clear guidelines, and I'm going to hang with the FDA on this one. I'm not really interested in what anybody else has to say about food safety. You can look around if you want to, but for me as a professional, I'm going to just go with this, and I'm going to review them with you just so you can be clear on them, because it's not very complicated. Keeping your food safe is pretty straightforward. I have a link to the complete safe food handling guidelines from the FDA. I'll include those in the show notes, but in particular, I'm just going to go over their tips for keeping your food safe. So number one, wash your hands. That's no new information. We should all be washing our hands right now, several times a day. They say wash your hands with warm water and soap for at least 20 seconds before and after you handle food. And of course, after using the bathroom, changing your baby's diapers, handling your pets, wiping your child's rear end after they go to the bathroom. Wash your hands. So that's the first one. The second one, wash your cutting boards. Wash your dishes, wash your utensils, spray down your countertops, or just wash them with hot, soapy water after you prepare food. They also go on to say, consider using paper towels to clean up kitchen surfaces, because those cloth towels that you might use over and over and over again, they can harbor bacteria. So You need to wash those. If you are using cloth towels, you need to launder them in a hot water cycle in your washing machine. So if you have paper towels, go ahead and use them to clean up your kitchen surfaces. If you're using cloth towels, make sure you remind yourself to, at the end of the day, pop them all into a hot cycle in the washing machine. Fruits and vegetables. Now, I have seen stuff like clean them in bleach. I've seen special washes. I've seen all kinds of weird concoctions. And what the FDA says is rinse your fresh fruits and vegetables under running tap water, including those that have skins like apples and rinds like oranges or bananas that are not eaten. And then scrub your firm produce with a clean produce brush. It is just water and a scrub brush for fruits and vegetables. And with canned goods, remember, clean the tops of those lids before you open the cans, because dust and particles and bacteria can sit on top of the lids. So wipe those down pretty good. For more safety guidelines for handling food, you can go to www.fda.gov. They have safe food handling guidelines. I'm including that link in the show notes, www.jillcastle.com/107. Okay. The other thing I want to quickly talk about is perfect meals. So I know I make a living off of teaching and helping and motivating families to make healthy, balanced meals. That doesn't mean they're perfect meals, but it means that they're healthy, balanced meals. And there's quite a range, and I always include some liberty around what a balanced meal looks like. I'm not a big fan of complicated gourmet meals for children. I'm a big fan, though, of meals that showcase as many food groups as you can get into the meal, and that those foods are identifiable by your child, that your child is comfortable, can identify, yeah, that's an orange. Oh, there's some green beans. Oh, I understand. That's a potato. I mean, children do really well when they can identify the foods that they're eating. But right now, during this coronavirus pandemic, I'm not making perfect meals. They're not always balanced, showcasing fruits and vegetables all the time. I'm very conscious of trying to use up what we have because I don't want to go to the store every day, and I don't want my loved ones to have to run out to the store every day or every other day. We're trying to minimize trips to the grocery store so that A, we don't get exposed, and B, we're not potentially exposing somebody else. We are trying to, or I am trying to, reuse and minimize food waste. We had a roasted chicken on Sunday for dinner. I took the carcass and used up my onions and my carrots, and we made chicken soup on Monday. So, reusing and minimizing food waste, using up what you have before you run back out to the store, can be challenging because if you have some weird ingredients, you're not necessarily certain what you can make with them. But I would say the internet is amazing in terms of pulling up recipes that do showcase odds and ends together. So use your search bar on Google and figure out, hey, what can I make with green beans and extra garlic and ginger? Or what can I make with leftover chicken? You'll find lots of ideas. And that, when you're reusing your food, you're minimizing the waste that is happening. And I think that's always a good idea. Recently, I wrote an article over on medium.com entitled How I'm Feeding My Kids During COVID-19. And I'll include that link in the show notes too. But basically, a couple of things that I said. Feeding kids is hard. Yeah, we all know that. Coronavirus, though, makes it harder. And so I've lowered the bar on nutrition and I've upped the ante on connection because right now my family's experiencing a lot of togetherness. And that is, to me, the silver lining in all of this. My husband and I were just talking about it the other day. We are able to spend lots of time with our kids. And while we have all this together time with them, we're also balancing separation and protecting our space and respecting each other's space. And so what does that balance look like day to day? I'm loving the fact that we can all connect at the end of the day, even if we're all doing different things, working, schooling, working out, hanging out, watching a movie, whatever we're doing. I'm loving the fact that at the end of the day, we're all coming together for a family meal, for dinner. And, that to me is, like I said, a blessing. So one of the things that I am doing, though, is trying to stick to the usual schedule. It's not always working because my kids are older and they don't exactly get up early. And truth be told, the kids in school are kind of rolling out of bed right when they have to show up for class online. But dinner time, I am keeping to the usual schedule. And that has helped us sort of feel like we have some structure to the day, some predictability. And that is something I think all children really appreciate, especially younger ones. If you have younger children, keeping breakfast and lunch and dinner at about the same time will really give them that sense of normalcy, even though these times are not normal at all. So I encourage you to go ahead and just stick to your usual schedule with meals and even with snack time too. And the reason I say for snack time too is because I think that when we're all home like this and we don't have lots of busy activities to keep us occupied, it's easy to graze through that pantry or the refrigerator. It's easy to turn to food when we're feeling a little bit bored. So keeping a schedule of nutritious snacks or interesting combinations of snacks can really help sort of break up that time between breakfast, lunch, and dinner and give your kids, quote unquote, something to do in between that really is more structured and you have a little bit more control over what they're eating because you're serving up snacks. So that's one thing I would do and I'd advise you to do is go ahead and stick to that usual schedule as best you can. The second thing is I'm letting go of food idealism. I don't think that we need to be uber healthy. We need to be the food police. I don't think that's going to benefit us in the long run in this situation. I think it's just going to even potentially cause more trauma to our kids if we're really harping on them about what they're choosing to eat and policing how much they're eating or how frequently they're eating. I think that your child won't suffer from eating canned soup, macaroni and cheese, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I mean, of course, if you can add fruits and vegetables, great, do it. But if you can't, don't stress out about it. There's always a children's multivitamin you can use to fill in any temporary gaps that get created by this situation. But in the long run, really, 30 days of an unbalanced diet, I don't think that that's going to create hardship for your child. So my advice would be to relax a little bit about what is getting eaten. And if you are getting that sense of stress and anxiety and worry about how well your child's eating and if his diet is balanced enough, or you're starting to worry because you already have a picky eater who doesn't eat very well and now they're really not going to eat really well, then I would advise you to just take a deep breath and know that you're doing the best that you can. Trust your child. Keep serving up meals on that structure. Keep being pleasant. Bring your kids to the table. And then recognize that, your job is done at that point, and to let them sort of take over and be in charge of their own bodies, their own plate, their own mouth. Let them choose to eat what they're going to eat from what you're serving. In terms of planning meals, I know that food balance may not be something that you're able to achieve every meal that you put together, but if you still sort of stay on track with your thinking around balanced meals, I think that can help you get closer to that. And I always say start with a protein when you're planning your meals, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Start with a source of protein and work from there. So protein sources like meat, fish, eggs, poultry, peanut butter, any other nut butter, beans, tofu, other soy products, milk, yogurt, cheese, all of those foods have a good quality protein content to them. And when you start with that, you are able to help your child, get the protein he needs, but really, protein is really good at helping your child stay satisfied after eating. After the protein, then plan out a grain. If you've got whole grains, use them. If you don't worry about it right now. But grains like pasta, rice, bread, couscous, oats, farro, whole wheat cereals, all kinds of things that are a great source of grains. Pretzels, whole wheat pretzels, lots of different foods that if they're made from a grain like flour or rice or corn, then they qualify as a grain. And then last, when you're planning these meals, look at fruits and vegetables. Any type will do. Fresh, frozen, canned, dried, whatever you can get on the plate. Great. And dairy, either milk, yogurt, cheese, or an alternative if your child can't have dairy. Make sure it has a good quality spread of nutrients, including protein and fat, especially with really young children. And then if all else fails, or you're still feeling nervous, you can always do a children's multivitamin. Just a daily dose of a general children's multivitamin that covers 100% of the RDA for their nutrients. And if your child's having too many sweets and treats because they're in the pantry or in the freezer or they're grazing a lot, this, to be completely transparent, we're having too many sweets and treats in my house too. I've got kids that want to make cookies all the time, but I know this will pass. This is not our normal eating. So if you can be, in charge of sweets and treats, especially for younger children, that's great. You can do this. That's awesome. One way you can do it is go ahead and serve those sweets and treats like they're part of the meal. They're part of the breakfast. They're part of the lunch. They're part of the dinner. They're not sort of novel, protected, restricted. They're just part of the everyday scene when it comes to mealtime or snack time. That then allows you to be in charge of them, not you reacting to your child going through the pantry and being in charge of them himself. So, just to recap on that, or to just summarize it, perfect meals, this is not necessarily the time for perfect meals. You may have limited ability to get all the foods that you want to be serving on a regular basis, and that's okay. Let's make do with what we have. Let's try to be as balanced as we can, but let go if it's not perfect. And let's focus on the actual being together with our family, with our kids. If you don't do family meals, I think you've got a perfect opportunity to start practicing them. Even in the next several weeks, practicing family meals together as much as you can, you'll get a good sense, and your kids will remember it too. You'll get a good sense of the family connectivity. You can work on all kinds of things. Talking at the table, using manners, developing your family blessing if you choose to do so. Just a lot of fun, interesting, meaningful things that you can do with your kids around the table. So I highly encourage you to do that. The last thing I want to talk about is just that feeling of anxiety or stress or fear or sadness that I mentioned earlier in the show. I read a really good article out of the Harvard Business Review called "That Discomfort You're Feeling is Grief." And I'm going to include that link in the show notes in case you want to read it too. But it was really basically just saying, this fear, this uncertainty that we're feeling, it's grief. We're grieving. We're mourning the losses. We're mourning our sense of control with the situation. We're grieving those that we know who are sick. We're grieving the loss of individuals to this virus. We're grieving or we're fearful of our loved ones who are involved in treating this virus. So there's just a lot there. When I read that article, I also at the same time had listened to a podcast episode that interviewed a neuroscientist by the name of Dr. Judd Brewer, and he has an app called Unwinding Anxiety. And I thought, I'm going to try this app. And so I downloaded it and I've been working through it just every day. It's like, 2 or 5 minutes of your day to go through the exercises. What's been meaningful for me is really understanding how your brain works when it's anxious. That has been very insightful. And just also learning techniques, everyday techniques, from looking at the window for 30 seconds and watching for movement, or breathing exercises, or tracking your body sensations. Just these exercises which equip you with real life things that you can do to calm yourself down, to take control of your brain again and your thinking. So I don't know if that will help you or not, but if it's something you are experiencing, I encourage you to look into it, and I'll include that link in the show notes too. It's basically, the app is called Unwinding Anxiety by Dr. Judd Brewer. He's a neuroscientist out of Brown University, and the website is www.unwindinganxiety.com. And then last, if you're feeling like your children are getting stressed out about this, or a little extra worried, or even just sad. I mean, if your children are experiencing the kinds of losses that many people are experiencing, a loss of, seeing their friends, loss of participating in sports, having things to do, having a full day, I encourage you to read an article. It's really a compilation of different resources for parents to help their children cope with this pandemic, and it comes from the Child Mind Institute, which you can find at childmind.org. I'll include that link in the show notes too. But remember, if you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling stressed or frustrated or sad or hopeless, it's possible that your child's feeling that way too. And again, one of the ways we can help our kids is to be there and to provide a consistent, structured environment where they know what they can count on, because we can't really count on anything right now with this virus. We can't count on being released and being back into the world and back in school. And so helping your children feel connected to something, a silly meal routine and family dinner at night, even though that might seem like, woo, this is not a big deal, it can be a big deal for your child. So with that, I will just say, stay safe, everyone. Follow the guidelines for your town, your state. I do believe this will help us minimize the length of this pandemic and keep us and our loved ones safer. And I just want to give a quick shout out to all the healthcare providers working to care for others, the first responders, the people who are operating our grocery stores, our soup kitchens, our food pantries, delivery personnel, all other citizens who are essentially keeping our country running right now. God bless you all. Until next time, I wish you all health and wellness, connection, and nourishment. Give that child in your life a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.